Wat heb jij gedaan?
Dat is tegen zo'n rotswensgebod.
So, they added a new playable character to TF2, and he is broken. He can chase rocket jumping soldiers out of the sky. His slam makes engineers sad.
Dispenser down!
His charge punch sends him across the entire map.
Screw gravity!
And he can stomp people, which is pretty funny. I'm not saying he's broken just because he's a boss fight. Obviously, he needs to be very strong.
Saxon Hail!
But when you put Hail in the hands of someone who knows what they're doing, he seems a bit overtuned.
Saxon Punch!
Here, I start the round with 18,000 health, because I'm against 20 people. Guess how much damage I take. Let's do some gameplay analysis. Let's see. It looks like I might be killing everything. Even when I skip boring sections, this clip just keeps going. Hail deals so much damage, he's so mobile. Look, this pyro can't do shit. Okay, he could have air blasted, but still. You know, this rampage is going on for so long that I'm actually running out of things to say. Wow, it's not even close. Saxon Hail is so easy for me that I can literally go AFK.
Ричард, я не смогу в ДС посидеть, я на концерт поеду. Смогу я. А? Я приеду, наверное, где-то в 10 только. Ты до скольки будешь?
But what makes Hail so broken? Is there anything specific we can blame? Is fixing him as simple as just lowering his health, or is there a different cause? What are the best strategies for
друзьям
winning this?
обещал, типа, у них
That's what I aim
концерт
to answer in this
там, группы
video.
свои.
To start,
Бля,
let's break
завтра
down how
будешь?
Saxon Hail works.
Ладно, давай тогда до завтра, Рич. Давай. Ну если что, позови кого-нибудь другого, там, Алсу, блядь, или...
Saxon Hail's maximum health depends on the number of people on the other team. The formula is a bit too complex for my simpleton brain to understand, but all you really need to know is that bigger number equals bigger number. His fists do 195 damage, except to medics who have some damage resistance.
ну чудо ты тоже.
Medics also take more knockback,
Ладно, всё,
letting
давай,
you
Рич.
fly away from your punches.
Хорошего секса.
Hail's movement speed is
Хорошего
322
секса.
hammer units per second.
Окей.
Just a smidge faster than
Окей.
Medic and Spy. You might think Scout would be able to just run away from Hail forever, but Hail decided to borrow a stat from Soldier's escape plan. His movement speed rises as he becomes injured. Hurt him enough and he'll start running at 520 hammer units per second. Hail has quite a few movement abilities that can increase his mobility. Brave Jump works similarly to Scout's Double Jump, but while Scout's Double Jump is small and lets the player quickly change directions, Hail's Brave Jump is a bit different. It's way bigger, that part's obvious, but less obviously, it's not as good for changing directions. Instead, you're encouraged to Brave Jump in the direction you're already going, as doing so will give you a speed boost. If you do your jump after a running start, you'll basically double your speed. Most classes won't be able to outrun this, and it's why you see so many Saxon players jumping around like mad, especially since the Brave Jump has no cooldown whatsoever. Also, you can stack Brave Jump with other sources of momentum, whether that be horizontal or vertical.
Screw gravity!
Way Down lets you descend quickly by holding the crouch button. You can do this at any time, it doesn't have a cooldown. If you pair Brave Jump with Way Down, you can constantly move up and down, making it much harder for the mercenaries to shoot you. It's also great for lowering your jump height, making it less likely for someone to run underneath you. I did mention stomping on people's heads earlier. It does 195 damage, the same as a punch. You can even combo both of these hits together to take down the game's tankier classes. But if you're not precise enough with your stomps, the next best thing is Mighty Slam, which is a lot more forgiving. Unlike a Way Down or Brave Jump, this one has a cooldown. When it's ready, Hail will do a unique animation when he fast falls, raising his fists in first person and body slapping in third person. If you're still holding crouch when you hit the floor, you'll damage enemies on a radius. After this, it goes on cooldown for 15 seconds. It's specifically designed for damaging large clusters of people. The damage dealt depends on your opponent's maximum health, so while it might not insta-kill anyone in particular, it still forces people to back off and heal themselves. Or if you've damaged them with some other attack, they'll just die to it. Hail's punches are particularly weak against buildings, so you should definitely use your abilities instead. Buildings take a massive amount of damage from Slam. As I mentioned at the start of the video, it makes engineers sad. If you're struggling with any particular sentry nest, it's best to avoid it and come back later. There's no use walking into it and taking a massive amount of damage when you could instead make clever use of your abilities. What you just saw was Sweeping Charge, which destroys buildings in an instant. This ability is activated by holding the reload button, and like the slam, it has a cooldown. When activated, you'll stop in place, even while airborne. The longer you charge it up, the longer the punch will last. The punch itself actually uses Demo Knight's charge as a base, so I'll be directly comparing the two attacks. Good thing I'm uniquely qualified to talk about this. Your ability to turn left and right is limited, but you can still turn up and down with no issue. In other words, imagine a Demo Knight charging underwater. Since it works like swimming, you don't have to worry about doing complex charge strafing patterns to build up speed. The punch's base speed is nearly twice as fast as a Demo Knight charge, so it should be very easy to use in comparison. Anyone you slam into will take damage and get knocked away from you. It's another good tool for dealing with crowds of enemies, and you can even combo it with other attacks to deal with soldiers, heavies or Demo Knights. Just make sure you don't waste your Brave Jump while charging. Yeah, apparently you can do that. It could end up getting fixed though. Here's something you might not know. You have full turn control while charging on the ground. The turning reduction only applies while you're in the air, or on certain slopes. I should also mention that you have damage resistance while charging the punch, but even with that resistance, it's still not a good idea to sit still for multiple seconds. Most of the time I release the punch as soon as possible. You know how Demo Knight's charge can remove debuffs, like the Jurati and the Mad Milk? Saxton's charge does the same thing. Not much more to be said there really. Saxton's last ability is Saxton Punch. It's so strong that it needs an exclamation mark. Once every 30 seconds, Saxton's fist starts glowing. The next punch that hits an enemy or a building will deal significantly more damage, and trigger an explosion that damages nearby enemies. This punch tends to kill every single class of the game. There are very few exceptions. Not much strategy with this one. Save it for a tanky enemy, or a group of enemies, or a group of buildings. Before I get to the more advanced stuff, here are some miscellaneous facts. Hail's regular punches can damage multiple people if they're close together. Each player besides the first will take 50% less damage. If Hail is stunned by certain weapons, and he takes over 1000 damage, you'll break out the stun animation and knock nearby players away. This was added to prevent Hail from getting stun locked repeatedly. Saxton Hail is 20% larger than a normal player. He's also the only character to be given a bigger collision box, usually called a bounding box. This was apparently done to make Hail a bigger target. Doesn't exactly match the comics, but that's a minor nitpick and it probably makes me sound like a giant nerd. On that note, while I was gathering footage, someone spawned at regular size and with 125 health. I don't have an explanation for that. Saxton Hail can't take fall damage. Since fall damage deals a percentage of your maximum health, this was a pretty obvious thing to remove. For similar reasons, Hail can't heal from health packs either, but he can still use them to remove fire and bleed effects. Speaking of debuffs, whenever Hail is hit by a mini-crit debuff, such as a Sniper's Jurati or a Scout's Fan of War, the effect will only last for half of its normal duration. Some Saxton Hail maps give him a damage resistance for the first few seconds of a round. Apparently, players who were brand new to the game mode would often get trapped inside certain spawn rooms, such as this one on the map Skirmish. Other maps don't really suffer from this issue as they simply drop Hail in from a high place. Hence, the temporary damage resistance at the start of the round is a map-specific thing. Also, what the hell is this? Okay, so Saxton Punch deals a lot of knockback, and as you can probably tell, the knockback that was initially intended for the enemy gets redirected into Hail. You have to hit them in a very specific way, and I haven't found a consistent way of getting it to work. It's also pretty hard to set up in the first place because, well, you know, how did I manage to stumble across this by complete accident? Now that we know how Saxton Hail works, let's discuss strategy. Spam the jump button. Special thanks to Fire God? Okay, but seriously. This thing speeds you up like mad. It's hard to come up with any reasons not to do it. It's even useful while indoors, since low ceilings can prevent you from overshooting your enemies. In one case, I deliberately smacked my head on a door frame to fall down a staircase faster.
Right, damn it!
The less people are shooting you, the less damage you'll take. Sounds painfully obvious, right? But that's exactly why spamming the Brave Jump is so effective. It makes you nearly impossible to hit, and it lets you squeeze more value out of Hale's massive health pool, as opposed to walking directly into the meat grinder and taking thousands of damage within seconds. If you really want to fight against groups of enemies, use your abilities!
You picked a fight with the wrong man!
If all of your abilities are on cooldown, don't just walk into the entire enemy team. It's best to hide behind cover for a bit, or at the very least, go after the people who are separated from the main group. Good Saxon Hale players spend most of the match in the air, so it's very important to have good air strafing skills. Master that and you'll be a significantly bigger threat than the guy who's just jumping in straight lines. You can always practice Hale's movement offline without having to deal with other players. I've put some instructions on screen if you don't know how to do that. You should also experiment with how you use way down. Depending on when you time it, you can get lots of different jump arcs, making your movement less predictable. Both way down and the slam can be cancelled at any time, just by releasing the button. It's easy to waste your slam unintentionally, so try not to forget. Comboing different attacks together is a good way to deal as much damage as possible. I already mentioned the Slump Punch combo, which is very effective, but there's also Stomp Slam, Punch Charge, Saxton Punch into Slam. Mix things up, basically. Your abilities often send enemies into walls or corners, letting you punch them afterwards. The easiest way to set this up is to use Charge. I also like to use Charge as a mobility tool. As I mentioned before, Hale's Brave Jump isn't exactly great for changing directions, and Charge lets you work around this. It's also great for accessing high places really quickly. And don't forget that you can do some insane routing as well. I have a giant list of other things I could talk about, but I can't make this another 1 hour video. I'd probably die trying. So let's just focus on one thing here. What's the main reason why Saxton Hale is so broken? They could nerf his health pool. They could add a cooldown to Brave Jump, but those aren't the core issues. The main problem, in my opinion, is that the Saxon Hale game mode can't account for different player skill levels.
Skill issue.
In a typical match of TF2, running any other game mode, the server will typically have a mix of good and bad players. Those players are then divided evenly between both teams. At least, ideally. It's not always perfect. But most of the time it averages out, and it's not so bad. Even if there's a superstar player on the enemy team, they'll typically get dragged down by their horrible teammates. It's dumb, but it could be worse, right? Could you imagine if the entire enemy team was filled to the brim with only skilled players? If they went up against a bunch of average players, that would be a complete steamroll. It's a good thing that none of the game modes could ever allow for this. There's just no way that it could possibly happen. Okay, you get the idea. An experienced Saxon Hale player is almost always going to have a giant skill advantage, and you can't expect a bunch of random casual players to match that effort. Trying to win against a great Saxon Hale player is like trying to win a 6v6 match against Furiotech, with 3 spies on your team. It's just not going to happen. The large health numbers might be more acceptable when the Saxon Hale player isn't very good at the game or brand new to the game mode. It might also be fun in a coordinated, skilled environment where everyone on the server is good, but that's not the reality here. If they want to nerf Saxon Hale, the goal should be to nerf him in the hands of skilled players. However, the nerf shouldn't affect players who aren't very good at the game, because those players aren't really causing an issue. There are several ideas you could throw into the mix here. Adding a cooldown to Brave Jump is a pretty common suggestion, but then Saxon Hale wouldn't be able to chase rocket jumping soldiers anymore. And when you consider a particular weapon, that might cause a problem.
Get over here, coward! No!
I'm no game designer, and I'm not going to pretend that I know the perfect solution. but I have been taking things into my own hands. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I like to give myself a handicap. This gives the enemy team a fighting chance, making it easier, and I like the added challenge. In fact, half health wasn't enough for me to start losing, so I kept pushing the envelope. 40% health. 35%. Screw it, 30%. The pressure mounts, because when I'm handicapping myself this hard, every bit of health left actually matters. I need to pick...
Apologies.
Oh shit, I'm at 15%? I need to brave jump like my life depends on it, because it does. And I need to use my abilities in a smart manner. Saxon Hale may be broken, but I don't need him to be broken to win.
Screw gravity. I win.
Your team is dead.
Suck. Froggy. That hurt. I win. Sucks. Hi. You have been guarded, maggot!
Sometimes my health gets so low that victory seems impossible. And you know, maybe it is. But that tension makes the mode a lot more exciting for me. I can't play brainlessly. My movement has to be on point. One mistake and it's all over. Come to think of it, that's probably why I main Demo Knight.
You win. Oh, you're going down, boys.
Special thanks to Anfo, Boys After Quarantine, Eve Hawthorne, 5 Gigawatt Gaming, Lucario, It's Tuesday, Yaroslav and Gluster, Ophin the Fat Drake, Thigod, and Zombie Pixelated.
Hey, Saxon. When am I getting a raise? Understood.
Eve Hawthorne, 5 Gig.
Understood.
Een spectaculaire live spelshow. Waarbij één studiokandidaat het opneemt tegen de rest van het land.
Het is all. Dit is de nieuwe Sly Horse Club paardenvrachtwagen. Neem je paarden mee op reis en maak je klaar voor de wedstrijd. En er is zelfs ruimte voor iedereen. Oefen tijdens de reis nog een sprong. Zet de paddock alvast klaar en maak je paarden goed schoon. Er is genoeg opbergruimte voor al je tuig en paardenspullen. Dus maak je klaar voor de reis.